Chapter 7: The Law Office of Tan and Tan Singapore. The OCBC Centre at 65 Chulua Street was nicknamed the Calculator because of its flat shape and windows that resemble button pads. The architect I.M.P. Pei had intended for the hulky grey tower to be a symbol of strength and performance. Once it was the headquarters of the Overseas Chinese Banking Corporation, the island's oldest bank. Unbeknownst to most people, the 38th floor of the tower was home to Tan and Tan, a small law firm that kept an exceedingly low profile but was undoubtedly one of the most influential legal powerhouses in the country. The firm also exclusively represented Singapore's establishment families and did not take on any new clients. One had to be especially recommended. Today, the glowing mahogany and glass receptionist counter had been given an extra polish. Fresh cut roses bloomed in the guest toilets, and every member of the staff had been told to dress in their smartest outfit. At around 15 minutes to 10, the elevator doors began to work overtime as the descendants of Shang Shu Yi started to arrive en masse. The Leong showed up first. Harry, Felicity, Henry Jr., Peter, and Astrid were joined by Victoria Young and the Akaris. At 9:55, Philip, Eleanor, and Nick joined the others in the discreet reception room with its imitationally Corbusier leather couches. Sitting down next to Astrid, Nick asked, "You okay?" He could always sense whenever things went right with his cousins. Astrid smiled, trying to reassure him. "I'm fine. I just didn't get enough sleep last night, that's all. I haven't been sleeping much either. Rachel thinks my body's just catching up to the grief, but it all still feels like some bizarre dream," Nick said. As he made that comment, the grandfather clock in the lobby began to chime 10, and Alex Young Cheng entered with her husband Malcolm and Eddie, Cecilia, and Alistair. Eddie cleared his throat as if he was going to make a speech, but he was interrupted by Kathleen Carr, who came out into the reception area to greet the family. Kathleen shepherded everyone down the corridor and through the double doors into the main conference room. A massive dark oak table dominated the room, placed in front of the bank of windows, framing a panoramic view of the bay. Sitting at one end of the table was Freddie Tan, Sue Yi's longtime lawyer, having coffee with Alfred Shang, Leonard Shang, and Oliver Sian. I knew Uncle Alfred would be part of this, but what the hell are Leonard and Oliver doing here? Eddie thought to himself. "Good morning, everyone," Freddie said jovially. "Please make yourselves comfortable." Everyone took their seats around the table, clustering more and more in their family units, except for Eddie, who positioned himself at the head of the table. "This was quite the send-off yesterday, wasn't it, Eddie? I never knew you could sing like that," Freddie remarked. "Thank you, Freddie. Shall we begin?" Eddie eagerly suggested. "Relax, kiddo. We're just waiting for one more person," Freddie said. "Who else is coming?" Eddie asked, suddenly alarmed. At that moment, the sound of expensive designer heels making soft clicks against marble could be heard in the corridor outside, and the receptionist opened the conference room doors. "This way, ma'am." Jacqueline Ling breezed into the room in a deep purple wrap dress, her Res-Ray sunglasses still on, and a Mitford blue Yves Saint Laurent couture overcoat flung across her shoulders. "So sorry to keep you all waiting. Would you leave? My driver took me to the wrong place. He thought we were going to Singapore Land Tower for some reason. No need to apologise. It's just a few minutes past 10, so you're fashionably late." "Ha ha," Freddie joked. Jacqueline took a seat next to Nick, who leaned over and gave her a friendly peck on the cheek. Freddie looked around at the anxiously assembled group and decided it was time to put them out of their misery. "Well, we all know why we're here, so let's get on with it." Eleanor smiled pensively while Philip leaned back in his chair. Alfred peered down at the sumptuously lacquered wood grain, wondering whether the table had been made by David Ning Ling. Nick winked at Astrid, seated across from him, and Astrid smiled back. Freddie pressed a button on the telephone next to him. "Twine, you can bring it now." An assistant, Natalie, dressed in a red sweat vest and striped tie, entered the room, ceremoniously holding an oversized parchment envelope folder. The assistant placed the folder on the table next to Freddie and then handed him a horn-handled letter opener. Everyone could see Sue Yi's personal wax on the envelope flap. Freddie took the letter opener and dramatically flicked the blade underneath the blood-red wax. Eddie inhaled audibly. Freddie carefully slid out a large legal-sized document from the envelope and held up to the room so everyone could clearly see what it was, and then he began to read. "Last will and testament of Shang Shu Yi. I, Shang Shu Yi of Taisro Park, Tysor Avenue, Singapore, revoke all formal wills and testamentary disposition the heretofore made by me, and declare this to be my last will. Appointment of executors. I appoint my nephew Sir Leonard Shang and great-nephew Oliver Sien to be the co-executors of my will. Eddie darted his eyes over his cousin, a little dismayed. Why in the world would Amma choose them as executors? Oliver, I can handle, but now I have to suck up to the pretentious Leonard. Specific cash legacies. I direct my residuary estate to execute payment on the following legacies: 3 million to my housekeeper Lia Ling, who has served my family with excellent devotion since she was a teenager. Victoria Smart. Oh, good, she deserves it. 2 million to my personal chef Lim Ah Ching, who has nourished my family with her fine culinary talent since 1965. Victoria shaking her head. Ah Ching's going to throw her feet when she realizes she's got less than Eileen. Better not eat the soup tonight. 1 million to my head gardener Jacob, who has maintained the grounds of Tysor Park with such loving care. I further bequeath to him all the rights of future royalties related to the orchid hybrids we developed together over the course of 5 decades. 1 million to each of my dear lady maids, Madri and Patravati, along with the antique Peranakan gold and diamond bracelets labelled for them in the Tysor Park vault. 500,000 to my head of security, Captain Vikram, who has diligently protected me since 1983. I further bequeath to him the Type 14 Naboo pistol given to me by Count Misachi preceding his departure from Singapore in 1944. Eleanor, wow, so generous. I wonder if old lady knew that he made a fortune with his day trading. 250,000 to my chauffeur Ahmad bin Yusuf. I further bequeath to him the 1935 Hispano Suicer Type 68J12 Cabriolet, which was given to me by my father on my 16th birthday. Alfred, damn, I wanted the Hispano. I guess I can buy it off him. I bequeath every remaining employee of Tysor Park, not mentioned here, the amount of 50,000 each. Specific legacies of personal properties. I direct that my jewelry collection be given and distributed according to the detailed list in Appendix A of this last will and testament, and as labelled in my vault at Tysor Park. Cecilia Chung. I wonder why she bothered. Everyone knows Astrid already got all the good shit. I direct that all artwork, antiques, and other household goods not specifically gifted by my will be distributed equally on my surviving children by my executors in an nearly equal proportion as may be practical, with the exception of the following: to my daughter Felicity Young Leung, I bequeath my collection of Celadon porcelain, which I know she will cherish and keep immaculately spotless for eternity. Alex, Felicity and her OCD. Mummy sure had a sense of humour when she wrote her will. To my daughter Victoria Young, I bequeath a small painting of a woman by her bedroom window by Eduardo Willard. I know she has always detested this painting, so I trust she will divest of it immediately and use the proceeds to buy that dream house in England that she kept talking about. Victoria, criticizing me from the grave all you want, but I've already been town housing shopping on Sotheby's real estate. To my son Philip Young, I bequeath all objects in Tysor Park belong to his father, Sir James Young. Philip, did I remember to program the DVR to record the new season of Arrow? Can't wait to get back to Sydney. This is such a colossal waste of time. To my daughter Alexandra Young Cheng, I bequeath my collection of carved ivory and jade named Seal, since she is the only one of my children who actually knows Mandarin. To my daughter-in-law Illinois Sung, I bequeath a box of Santa Maria Novelle almond soap. All the women in the room gasped audibly, while Eleanor simply broke out in laughter. Nick glanced at his mother, not understanding. Jacqueline whispered to Nick, "She's letting anyone know she thinks your mother was a dirty woman." To my cherished granddaughter Astrid Leong, who in every way takes after my mother's style, I bequeath my collection of Cheong Sam's ceremonial robes, vintage textiles, hats, and accessories. To my granddaughter Cecile Chung, champion equestrian, I bequeath the Chinese scroll painting of a galloping herd of horses from the Northern Song period by Li Gonglin. To my loyal and always amusing grandnephew Oliver Sien, I give and bequeath a pair of Emile Jacques table lamps from my dressing room and my first-time edition of W. Somerset Maugham's Far Eastern Tales. To my devoted grandson, Edison Jung, I bequeath a pair of Asbury sapphire and platinum cufflinks gifted to my husband, Sir James Young, on our golden anniversary by the Sultan of Perawak. James was too modest to wear the cufflinks, but I know Edison will not be so bashful. I have made no specific requests or provisions for my grandchildren, Henry Leong and Peter Leong, for whom I have great affection, because they were left generous legacies in my late husband, Sir James Young's will, and because I know they had been amply provided for by the Leong Family Trust. Henry Leong Jr. What generous legacy? Gong Gong only left me $1 million, and I was just a little kid. Number 4. Legacy of historical archives, photographs, documents, personal letters, and ephemera. I bequeath ownership and all copyrights and intellectual property rights of my personal archives at Tysdell Park, including all family photographs, letters, journals, and documents, to my dearest grandson, Nicholas Young, the noted historian of our family. 5. Legacy of shares. I bequeath my 1 million Ling Holdings Proprietary Limited preference shares, which Ling Yin Chow lost to me during an epic mahjong battle in 1954, to my beloved granddaughter, Jacqueline Ling. If she does not survive me, I bequeath shares to her daughter, Amanda Ling. It is my hope that this will correct the bad balance of power within the Ling clan. Jacqueline's cool, collected visage hid what she was feeling inside. Dear Suyi, you've liberated me. My God, I wish I could hug you right now. Felicity and her sisters frowned a little, not quite understanding what all this meant, but Eleanor, who was on top of the market, immediately started doing the math in her head. $1 million, and Ling's holding is around 145 per share today. Jesus, Jacqueline's getting a huge windfall. 6. Residue of my estate. The residue of my estate consists of cash and other financial instruments held at my bank in Singapore, HSBC in Hong Kong, Bangkok in Thailand, and C. Hall & Co. in London, Landolt and CI in Switzerland. I direct all the monies held at these institutions to be used towards payments of the legacies specified in Clause 2. At the fulfillment of all the specified legacies, I ask that my remaining monies be used to fund a new charitable foundation to name the Young Foundation in memory of my husband, Sir James Young. I appoint Astrid Leong and Nicholas Young as co-executives of the foundation. Legacies of real property. I give and bequeath my property in Cameron Highlights, Malaysia, and all the contents within this 80-acre estate to my dear grandson, Alexander Leong. If he does not survive me, I give the property to his wife, Salima Leong, and my great-grandchildren, James, Anwar, and Yasmin Leong, who are most unfortunate have not been able to meet in equal shares. Harry Leong was stunned. This was such a slap to his face. Felicity didn't dare look at her husband, but Astrid couldn't help but smile. I can't wait to Skype Alex. I want to see the look on his face when he finds out that Amar left the incredible inheritance in Malaysia to him, the son who had been disowned by his father for marrying a native Malay girl. B. I give and bequeath my property in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and all the contents within this 300-acre estate to my beloved daughter, Catherine Young Akara. If she does not survive me, I give the property to children, James, Matthew, and Adam Akara, in equal shares. Catherine started to sob, while Felicity, Victoria, and Alex all bolted up in their seats, staring at her shock. What estate in Chiang Mai? Freddie Tan paused for a moment, and without a hint of fanfare, read the final clause of the will. C. I give and bequeath my house in Singapore to the following family members in the portion indicated below. My only son, Philip Young, 30%. My eldest daughter, Felicity Young, 12.5%. My second daughter, Catherine Young Akara, 12.5%. My third daughter, Victoria Young, 12.5%. My youngest daughter, Alexandra Young, 12.5%. My grandson, Nicholas Young, 10%. My grandson, Alistair Young, 10%. Signed by Sheng Shuyi. Freddie put the document down and looked up at everyone. Felicity, Victoria, and Alex were still trying to digest the surprise news that their mother had owned a secret estate in Thailand. Go on, Eddie said impatiently. I finished, Freddie answered. What do you mean you finished? What about Tysdell Park? I just read you that clause. What do you mean? You didn't mention Tysdell Park at all? Eddie insisted. Freddie signed and began to recite the final clause again. When he was finally done, the room was completely silent for a moment. Then things erupted as everyone started talking at once. We all have a share in Tyswell Park, Felicity said, uttered, confused. Yes, you specifically have a 12.5% share in the property, Freddie explained. 12.5%, what does that even mean? Victoria grumbled. Eleanor smiled triumphantly at Nick, and then she whispered in Philip's ear, your mother can insult me all she wants, but at the end of the day, you and Nick got the majority share, and that's what counts. Nick glanced around the table at his cousin Alistair, who shook his head in disbelief. I can't believe Mama actually left me something in her will. More than a little something, Nick said with a grin. Witnessing Nick's exchange with his brothers, Eddie grew more livid by the moment. Suddenly he jumped out of his chair, shouting, this is total bullshit. Where's my share in Tyswell Park? Let me see that, Will. Are you sure this is even the latest version? Fred looked at him calmly. I can assure this is your grandmother's last will and testament. I was present when she signed it. Eddie snatched the document from his hand and flipped through the last page. Then on the bottom of the page was a notarized seal, accompanied by the following words. Signed in the presence of Fiona Tung Cheng and Alfred Sang on the 9th day of June 2009. Eddie's eyes almost bulged out of his head. Fuckity fuck, my wife was a witness. Indeed she was, Freddie replied. That bitch never told me. And the will was signed in 2009. How is this possible? Eddie said, almost shrieking. Stop asking stupid questions, you goldblock. She took a pen and signed it. Alfred scolded him, getting fed up. Eddie ignored his great uncle. But this means she never changed her will, not even when Nicky married Rachel. Nick realized his cousin right. After all the endless speculation about him being disinherited, it turned out that his grandmother never once wavered from her original plan. She left a majority stake of Tyswell Park to his father, knowing one day it would be passed down to him. Suddenly he felt an enormous wave of guilt wash over him. Why did he waste so many years being mad at Amma? But Eddie wasn't done with his tirade. He stormed over to Freddie's tent chair and looked at him in the eye accusingly. The other day when you came to see my grandma, you told me I was going to be the main beneficiary. Freddie looked startled. I have no idea what you're talking about. I said no such thing. You told me I was the man of the hour. Freddie almost began to laugh. But seeing the look on Eddie's face, he tried to soften the blow. Eddie, I was making a pun about the Patek Philippe you were wearing. You had on the 150th anniversary jump hour reference. 3969 watch, one of my favorite models. Eddie glared at him incredulously before crumbling into his chair in embarrassment. Alex gave her son a pitiful look and then turned to the lawyer. Freddie, I'm not clear about how my mother's financial holdings are going to be divvied up. What about her other stocks and her shares of Shang Enterprise? Freddie looked up uncomfortable and swiveled his chin in Alfred's direction. Your mother had no other stocks aside from Ling Holdings, Alfred said, but Mummy had a huge stock portfolio. She had told me she had every blue chip counter. Wasn't she the biggest private shareholder in Keppel Land Robinson Singapore Press Holdings? Felicity argued. Alfred shook his head. No, I am. But doesn't she share all that with you as co-owner of Shang Enterprise? Alfred leaned back in his chair and looked at Felicity. You need to understand something. Shang Enterprise, the shipping company, the trading firm, all our various business interests around the world are controlled by the Shang Lung Ma Trust. Your mother was a beneficiary of the trust, but never a co-owner. So who owns Shang Enterprise? Alex asked. Once again, the trust owns Shang Enterprise, and I'm the chief custodian of the trust. Your grandfather will stipulate that the trust would be passed down through the male line. Only the Shang men could inherit. He was extremely old-fashioned, as you know. So how did Mummy get all her income? Alex asked. She had no income, but the trust paid for all her expenses. My father's wording in his will was very specific. He stipulated that Sue every need disowned whim is to be taken care of in her lifetime by the trust. So we did. The trust paid for everything. Felicity was incredulous. Alfred sighed. Everything. As you well know, your mother did not have any concept of money. She was born to live like a princess, and she continued to live this way for her 9 decades. Supported all of you, maintained her lifestyle at Tyswell Park, in Cameron Highlands, everywhere she travelled. How much do you think it cost to keep a staff of 70 for so many years? To throw grand parties every Friday night. Believe me, your mother blew through a vast amount. What will the trust pay for now? Victoria asked. Alfred leaned back in his chair. Well, nothing. The trust has met all its fiduciary duties to your mother. Victoria looked at her uncle, almost afraid to ask her the next question. So you're telling us that we are inheriting nothing from the Shang Trust? Alfred shook his head solemnly. The room went silent for a moment as everyone soaked in this bombshell. Felicity was silent, the enormity of her uncle's word slowly sinking in. At all this time she thought her mother, the great heiress, had been co-owner of an empire with hundreds of billions, and now it turns out she had never been part of the equation. This meant This meant in turn that she would inherit nothing from Shang Enterprise. She was not a great heiress to anything. She had not been left. She had only been left 12.5% in the house, just like the rest of sisters. But this wasn't right. She was the eldest child. How could Mummy do this to her? Collecting herself, Felicity steeled herself and looked Afro in the eye with a question. How much does Mummy have in her bank account? Not much, really. Some of her accounts are absolutely ancient. Hawes only has about £3 million. She inherited that account from her mother, and that was Mum's shopping account when she ordered things from Harrods. Langcoat and Sears holds her. Langcoat and Sea in Switzerland. Switzerland holds her gold billions, and that was really just in case the world went to absolute hell. I'd say she has about 50 million total for each family, but that money will now go towards paying for all the legacy she left to Archie, Arling, and so forth. Victoria frowned at Freddie accusingly. I don't believe this. I don't believe that all this time Mummy has so little money. Freddie sighed. Well, she did have one major income producing asset, and that was her links holding the preference shares she had. 1 million shares that paid a considerable dividend, but she reinvested it all in buying more shares. Her shares are valued at about $500 million today, but as you know, that's spoken for now. The sister stared at Jacqueline in absolute horror. Sue's beautiful goddaughter had automatically inherited more money from their mother's estate than they did. So you're telling me that anything of any income generating value were inheriting. So you're telling me that anything of any income generating value were inheriting from my mother is Terrestrial Park. Felicity said slowly, as if not believing her own words. Well, this isn't exactly a chopped liver. Terrestrial Park is worth more than $1 billion today. If you sold it, Freddie remarked. $2 billion. Alfred piped up. Victoria shook her head vehemently. But we could never sell Terrestrial Park. He has to stay in the family. Where does that leave us? We've got nothing, and I'm supposed to live off the proceeds of one miserable woolyard. Felicity looked at her husband with tears in her eyes and said in a quivering voice, if we force this, Terrestrial Park only get a few hundred million. I'm going to be a nobody now. Harry squeezed her hand, encouraging, darling, you're my wife. You're Ponson's Henry Long, and we have our own money. You'll never be a nobody. Philip got from the table abruptly and spoke for the first time. This was obviously Mum's plan all along. If she wanted one of us to get Terrestrial Park, she would have left it to that person in her right, but the way she divided up, she knew that would only be one thing we could do. She wanted us to sell the damn house. Okay, Chapter 8. Dempsey Hill, Singapore. P.S. Cafe was an oasis nested in the parklands of the former Dempsey Hills barracks, and the moment Nick entered the tranquil space with Astrid, he felt like he could breathe easier. As if echoing his thoughts, Astrid said, I am so glad we managed to make our escape. 2 hours was sufficient. 2 hours with the family in the lawyer's office. I think it's going to take me a year to recover. Nick laughed, looking around to see if Rachel and Carlton had arrived. Ah, they're hiding in the corner. So you have a hot date tomorrow night, Rachel teased her brother as they sat at a table bathed in sunlight filtered through the giant plate glass windows. I'm hoping it will be a hot date. You know, sometimes an actual date to screw things up. Carlton sat taking a sip out of his lychee lime soda. And you have been inseparable for the past week. I don't see how you could possibly screw it up at this point. Rachel looked up and saw Nick and Asher navigating between the crowded tables towards them. Here they come, let's ask Astrid. No, Carlton said bashfully. Ask me what? Asher asked as she leaned over to give Rachel a peck on the cheek. In your expert opinion, do you think it's a bad idea for Carlton to tell your cousin on a date? What real date? I figured they were already halfway to Vegas to get married. Astrid teased. Stop it, I'm not sure she's that into me, Carlton said. Carlton, if she wasn't into you, she wouldn't be able to get close. Really? Carlton seemed dubious. Astrid sat down next to him. First of all, her parents are pathological protective of her. You've seen her security detail. I'm told that in Paris she has undercover agents trailing her everywhere she goes, and even she doesn't know who they are. But aside from that, Cheshire has left a trail of carnage since she was a teenager. I've never seen so many lovesick puppies get her heart stomped on, but you, Mr. Dimples, have gone through the Proctorial Guard. Where are you taking her on your hot date? Nick prodded. I thought I'd keep things really casual. Maybe a walk followed by drinks at Lavelle's 33. Ashton made a little face. You might want to rethink that. You're going to have to go up. You're going to have to up your game, Carlton. Cesare Shane does not impress easily, Nick warned. Only Julie. Okay, Julie noted. Carlton laughed. Rachel, meanwhile, was on the edge of her seat, wanting to know what happened at the reading room. Anyway, enough about Carlton's novel. How are you guys? Did everything go okay? Nick stared out the window, and from where he was sitting, it seemed as though the entire cafe was a glass tree house, and he just wanted to dive out the window and be enveloped by the foliage. I am not sure. My brain is totally fried. How do you think it went, Astrid? Astrid leaned back in her chair and let out a sigh. I've never been in a room that was filled with that much tension. There were many surprises, and I think everyone in shock at the moment. Eddie specifically. Eddie especially? Why Eddie? Rachel asked. Nick gave a little laugh. The poor soul thought he was going to inherit Tricewell Park. Knowing the big question on Rachel's mind, he continued. It's not going to be me either. I have a small share, but Tricewell Park is being divided up like a big wheel of cheese amongst my father, his sisters, and Alistair, as it turns out. Rachel's jaw dropped. Alistair? Geez, no wonder if Eddie's in shock. Shock today, fratricide tomorrow, Astrid quipped. How about you, Astrid? Are you surprised that you didn't get a share of the house? Rachel asked. I never imagined I would. I'm happy enough that Mama left me a few things she knows I'll cherish. Astrid's phone rang, began to ring, and seeing that it was Charlie, she quickly got up from the table and said, back in a moment. If the waitress comes, can I get a peach and lychee fizz? After Astrid had left the table, Rachel asked, so if the house is being divided up among so many people, how's that going to work? Nick shrugged. I guess that's what they're trying to figure out now. The rest of the family's back at the house having a big powwow over the lunch. Rachel reached across the table and gave Nick's hand a squeeze. She could only imagine how difficult it must have been for him to sit there in the office and find out how his grandmother's entire life was going to be dismantled and dispersed. Changing the topic, she said cheerily, well, let's order. I'm starving, and I hear the Tiger beer battered fish and chips are amazing. Standing in the pastry outside the cafe, Astrid listened worriedly as Charlie tried to explain the situation. My security team did a full sweep. They searched every last bit of my apartment, but they couldn't find a thing. No hidden cameras, no surveillance device, nothing. And I just heard back from the Singapore team. They couldn't find anything in your house either. Astrid around. What does that mean? I'm not sure. It's pretty damn alarming that there's video footage of us in my bed, but no one has any idea how it was recorded. Could it have been done from a drone? Astrid wondered. No, it's the wrong angle. We studied every frame of the footage, and it had to have been shot from the foot of my bed, not out the window. What device was in my bedroom is now gone. Oh, that's reassuring, Astrid said mordantly. So whoever planted the device came back to remove it. That would appear to be the case. Listen, I'm flying in more security experts from Israel to do another assessment. I want them to go over everything with an even finer comb, and then I'll send them to Singapore to do another sweep of your house. Until then, I don't think you should go back to your place until we figure this out. Astrid leaned against a pillar, sighing in frustration. I can't believe this is happening. I feel so violated, like nowhere I go is safe anymore. I feel like Michael has eyes everywhere in this town. Why don't you come to Hong Kong? I'm holed up in the Peninsula now, in the Peninsula Suite. This is where all the head of state stay. It's really the most secure place you can be at the moment. I feel like if I leave now, it's admitting defeat. Michael will know he's managed to intimidate us. Astrid listened to me. What did we say last night? We're not going to let Michael win. We're not going to let him dictate the rules here. You're not fleeing town. You're coming to Hong Kong to see me, to have a good time, to start looking into options for our wedding. Your grandma's funeral is over, and we're going to get on with our lives, Charlie said reassuringly. You're absolutely right. I have to come to Hong Kong. We have our wedding to plan, Astrid proclaimed, the fire returning to her voice. Thank you for listening.